Welcome to this tent of wonders, my dears. And have I got a special tale for you tonight? A tale of wonders most curious and magic most foul. So gather round, unlucky ones. You wouldn't want to meet the same grim fate as the wicked stepmother of tonight's tale. The tale of the juniper tree. Now, once upon a time, in a land not too distant from this here tent of wonders, there lived a rich man and his wife whom he loved dearly. Now every night, this wife would pray and pray to be blessed with the pitter-patter of tiny feet. And every night she prayed, those tiny feet never came. She was never blessed with children of her own. On one winter day, as she sat peeling an apple beneath the juniper tree in her garden, she slipped and she cut her finger, and her blood fell upon the pure white snow. She paused and she looked upon the blood, and she said, "Oh, how I wish that I could have a child as white as snow and as red as blood." But it was a long time since then, when the snow had melted and the branches of the juniper tree had grown strong and bore many berries, on which the wife gorged herself, and she fell ill, so gravely ill in fact, that she felt the need to ask her husband that if she were to die, to bury her bones beneath the beautiful juniper tree. But 9 months later, she had not died, but she had borne a beautiful son. She was so pleased and overjoyed. But very soon her illness struck again, and she fell dead, and she was buried, as she had asked, beneath the branches of the juniper tree. Her husband grieved dearly, but eventually he remarried and had another child, a daughter. Now, this new wife of his, she loved her daughter so, and who could blame her, for she was a charming girl. But when she looked upon that boy, she looked upon that boy with scorn, and she treated him most cruelly. Now one day, the little girl went up to her mother and asked if she might have an apple. "Yes, my dear child, you may," said the mother, and so she handed the girl an apple. But the little girl asked a question that made her mother furious. She asked, "Mother, why does my brother never get given apples when he asks?" And so the mother snatched the apple right from her little hands and said, "Well, have it your way. You shan't have an apple until your brother has had an apple." And so she took the apple into her room and put it in the chest at the end of her bed, the one with the heavy lid. Now, when the little boy came home from school that night, she asked, "Do you care for an apple?" The little boy said yes he would. And so she took him up to her room. She opened the lid of the chest, and she said, "There, take it." And so the little boy reached his little arms into the chest, and just as his little fingers had grabbed onto the apple, she slammed that lid, and his head to the chest like so. But she knew that she didn't want to be known as a murderess, and so she had a very wicked plan, but a very cunning plan nonetheless. And so she went to her dresser, and she got her kerchief out, and she placed the head upon the boy's neck, and wrapped the kerchief around, so that no one could know better. She placed the boy in the chair, and she placed the apple in his hand. Now that night, as she was cooking dinner, the little girl approached her and she asked, "Mother, why is my brother looking so pale? And he has an apple which he refuses to share." "Why, how very rude! Has he no manners?" said his stepmother. And so she said, "Go and ask for a second time if you might have a bite of the apple, and should he refuse this time, you have my permission to hit him." And so off trotted the little girl, and moments later she came back crying and completely distraught. She said, "Mother, Mother, I have done something terrible. I have knocked my brother's head off." Now she did her best at acting shocked. She said, "Oh, goodness gracious, my dear girl. Now you know what happens to evil little girls like yourself, now don't you?" She nodded her head, for she knew what happened very well. For that man would come out of the forest and snatch her from her bed as she slept, and load her into his wicker basket and carry her off, never to be seen again. And so she begged her mother, "Please, please, there must be another way." And her mother's lip curled upwards, and she said, "Why, there might be. If you keep your little mouth shut, and your father hears not a word of this, then I am sure you shall sleep soundly. Now run along, your mother will see to this, and no one shall hear any more of it." Now, as you well know, when the father got home that night, he asked where his son might be. "Why, he is off to see his uncle in the country," said the wicked stepmother. The father thought this odd. "Why, my boy has manners. He would have at least said good-bye to his own father, would he not?" But he was very keen, his wife informed him. Well, he let the matter slide, but when he saw his daughter crying, he asked her what the matter was. But she knew what would become of her if she were to let on what had happened, and so she did indeed keep her mouth shut. And so he was none the wiser. He decided to let it slide. But that night he complimented his wife and commented that the meat was extra tender that night. And he ate down 2 servings, and he threw the bones underneath the table. But that night, as her mother and father lay sleeping, the little girl gathered up the bones and wrapped them in her best silken kerchief. And she crept out into the garden and laid them down beneath the juniper tree. But as she sat back to say grace, the tree burst into a brilliant flame, and clouds of magnificent smoke billowed out from it, and from the flames sprung the most glorious of birds, his wings spread wide, as white as snow, and as red as blood. And when the flames were gone, the tree was scorched not one bit, and the bones were gone. Now that very next morning, that magnificent bird perched himself upon the roof of the goldsmith's house, where he began to sing. My mother, she killed me, my father, he ate me, but sweet Molly made sure to see that they were gathered so nicely and wrapped in silk as sweet as could be, and laid out beneath the juniper tree. The goldsmith came running out immediately to see the source of the noise. Whereupon he saw the beautiful bird. He asked the bird if he might sing again. No, said the bird, for he does not sing a second time for free. And so out came the goldsmith with a golden watch chain, the very finest, my dears, which he gave to the bird, and the bird began to sing again. My mother, she killed me, my father, he ate me. And after he was finished, he flew off to the cobbler's house, where he perched upon the roof and began to sing again. And out came the cobbler, proclaiming how beautiful the bird's voice was. And so he brought everybody in the family, the maids, the butlers included, and he asked if the bird might sing again. The bird said no, not for free. And so the cobbler asked his wife to go and fetch the fine red slippers immediately. So out she came with a pair of dazzlingly beautiful red slippers, which he handed to the bird, and the bird began to sing again. With the golden watch chain in one claw, and the red slippers in the other, he flew off to the mill, where he perched and he began to sing. Out came the workers and asked if he might sing again. Such things come at a price, said the bird. What price is it? We are but lowly mill workers. We have not a penny to spare. Why, no penny ask I. I only ask you give me the millstone. Why, the millstone does not belong to me, said the worker. But he turned to the other workers and says, now if this beautiful bird were to sing again, would you give him the millstone? Every single worker present said yes, yes indeed, they would. And so they placed a stick underneath the millstone, they heaved, and they pulled it up, just so the bird could slip his neck through the hole in the centre. And so he began to sing again. And off he flew home to perch in the juniper tree, where he began to sing again. My mother, she killed me. Now, when the father of the house heard this, he was beguiled, and so he set out to see what bird might be singing. Now, when he came back, he had a beautiful golden watch chain around his neck. The daughter was pleased to see this, and was pleased to hear the bird singing. My father, he ate me, but sweet Molly made sure to see. So she suggested that she go out as well, but her mother was not quite as smitten as the other two, for she lay on the floor, howling with her hands over her ears, screaming that she'd rather be dead than listen to that wretched bird sing for a second time. But the little girl listened not to her mother, and she trotted out into the garden, and she came back with the most beautiful slippers upon her feet. The mother thought that maybe, if she were to go out into the garden, she would be given a present as well. So out she went. But she did not come back so soon. They heard the singing stop and a loud thud. And when they went out into the garden, the woman was nowhere to be seen. All there was a millstone on the floor, and standing behind the millstone was a boy, beaming from ear to ear. And that concludes tonight's tale, my dears. I pray you stumble upon this here tent of wonders again in the future, my favourite little Corvus. For Madame Corvus has many more fabulous tales to tell. But, as told by my dear friend Claire here, the moon is high, and it grows late, my dears. So sleep tight, and be kind, my dears. Good night.